Good everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. So today I'm gonna start a new series. That's the Salesforce Identity series. Um, that being said, right? I mean, I would like to cover two or three lectures in the form of a theory because it's very important for you guys to understand the the basic fundamentals before we go and implement stuff, right? Otherwise, it's pointless, right? I mean, you'll be thinking, why this guy's implementing this? Why this, why I'm implementing that? Right. So today I'm going to talk about the few important concepts which I believe you should know if you're dealing with Salesforce Identity. Okay, so let's get started. All right. So what's the use of a Salesforce identity, right? What are we talking about Salesforce identity at its first place? Okay, so in a very simple nutshell, Salesforce identity lets you give the right people the right access to the right resource at the right time. Okay, you can control who can access your org and who can use the app running on the Salesforce platform or on-premise or in other clouds or even in the mobile device, right? That's in a nutshell what Salesforce Identity can do for you. Okay, so now the simple example is, right, think about an old scenario, right? Let's go back to in 80s, right, or 70s, right? I mean, way before I was born, but just give an example. Let me take you back in time, right? Let's say you have a system here in place. Okay, let's assume that Salesforce was there in place in 1970. We have Salesforce there. Okay, I know that you might think, oh, there's no Salesforce, but just for the sake of assumption, let's say we are in 1970s, right? We got a time machine. We've gone back in time. Okay, Salesforce, right? Now Salesforce wants to interface, with different systems. Okay, which is um, right? Which Salesforce can do that somehow, right? I mean, there was no concept of APIs back then, but somehow Salesforce integrated, let's say, System A, System B, System C, okay? Now, the problem with this approach back in the days, right? A user, right? Say, I'm a user, right? I'm a sticky man. I'm a user here. Needs to remember the username to log into Salesforce, which is great. But at the same time, I need to, know the username to and password to remember for system one. Also, I'll put this A, system B, system C, right? So it's like a mess, right? Imagine I have 50 systems to log into, right? I have to write down the username and password somewhere. I have to, you know, say for instance, I have to put it in some key storage so that it don't get hacked, and it gets messy, right, as the system grows, right? So that's where identity comes to the picture. Imagine you just log into Salesforce and using a single login you can access to system A and B and C, right? How convenient it is, right? That's where the concept of identity comes in the picture, right? The concept of single sign-on, which we're going to talk in a minute, right? And now another advantage is that, like I mentioned there, right, uh, as I mentioned, that there's no need to remember lots of username and password. So that also helps admin to spend less time dealing with user login issues, right? Someone comes to you and say, oh, I've forgotten the username of this, I've forgotten the username of that, I've forgotten this. It's like a mess, okay? So developer can build web and mobile applications that work seamless with existing business process, right? That's one of the advantages of having the identity, okay? And it also helps the partners to integrate the solutions with your Salesforce org, and which is fantastic, right? And the partner can integrate. So in today's world, right, everything is connected, okay? And more systems want to integrate with each other, okay? So an identity plays a very important role, right? So that being said, right, now when we talk from a Salesforce perspective, right, let me move to another slide. I like to use Jambo, right? It's because I'm an old school, and I like to use the old-fashioned markers and board. But I think if you're talking on a digital level, then Jamboard is pretty cool. Okay, now when it comes to Salesforce Identity, right? Salesforce Identity comes in different flavors. Okay, so when someone tells you, okay, I wanted to work with Salesforce Identity, right? the few things you have to consider, right? What exactly that person talking about, right? Because Salesforce Identity is a broad term. I mean, is he talking about integrating the Salesforce with the different systems, or is it talking about a single sign-on, or is that person talking about connected apps, or is it about app launcher? There are a lot of things, right? So keeping that in consideration, I'm going to talk about each one. Okay, so I'm going to use the first one, single sign-on. Okay, so single sign-on. Let's start with a single sign-on. Okay, I think I spelled it right. Single sign-on. Okay, all right. Now, single sign-on is a pretty good concept, right? Single sign-on, it lets user access all the authorized resource without logging in separately to each and other system. Okay, let me give you a very simple example. Okay, I'll draw it. Okay, I don't want it to use this. So this is Salesforce. Okay, this is Salesforce, and you have SharePoint. Right? I hope if people use SharePoint before, so I'll put it as SP SharePoint. I have Office 365. Okay, so 365, right? And say I have Workday. Okay, just say double it there. Okay, so now, with the help of single sign-on, right? Imagine there's no concept of single sign-on, right? So you usually have to remember your own username and password to log into Salesforce, username and password. And the same way, for the SharePoint, you need a username and password. Office 365, you need a username and password. Workday, you need a username and password. Imagine what a mess it is, right? Like as the system grows, your username and password list will grow as well, which is a freaking nightmare in my opinion. So the single sign-on will let you use one username and password to connect to all of the systems, right? So for instance, you can access to Salesforce, okay, using your Azure AD login. Azure AD login in the sense you log into your Windows account, right? So that's maintained by Active Directories. So, say your first name dot last name at whatever.com, right? And you use a username and password. So, and you don't have to log into Salesforce using a special username and password. You can use single sign-on to log in here. You can use the same username and password in form of single sign-on to log into SharePoint, to access Office 365, to access Workday, right? So look at it, right? It's convenient. You don't have to remember different username and password, and it's secure, right? So behind the scene, it uses SAML. I'm going to talk about the language of identity in the next episode, not today, but I just wanted to give you an idea about what each term means, right? Okay, so this is pretty cool, right? So I hope that is clear. Single sign-on, it's pretty used in most of the companies, right? And I'm pretty sure even in your company, you use the single sign-on, right? So it's not only associated with the Salesforce, right? It's just a generic term which is used across software system. Okay, now the next thing I want to talk about connected apps, right? So Salesforce offers connected apps, okay? So you can create your own connected apps. So just gonna connected apps, right? So, and connected apps, okay? Now, have you ever integrated, you must be wondering, I'm just asking a simple question, and before you wander around, have you ever integrated Salesforce to an external system, right? Where an external system vendor, external vendor like SAP or another ERP system or Oracle or Bamboo HR or whatever, right? They reached out to you and said, look, we wanted to push the data to the Salesforce, so we need access to your Salesforce API. Okay, so now you can use your connected apps to give access to the API and set up a OAuth credential. So let me show you what I mean by that. So this is my org. Okay, so go to the setup here. So if you don't know how to go to setup, this is gecko icon, right? I hope you know by now because we're talking about identity, right? So one of the prerequisites of coming to identity, I hope you guys have basic understanding of Salesforce, at least the admin side of things. If you do not know the admin side of things, then it's can get a bit tricky. But that being said, stay tuned. I'll try to cover you know, as many topics as I can, right? Just to make your life easier. All right, so we got a quick find. So you're gonna go to App Manager, right? And so, okay, just a second. It's just gonna take its own time. All right, let me say app in the new. All right, now you can create a new connected app here. So let's say I want to create a new connected app, right? And so this is where you fill out all the information, right? So you put the connected app name, contact email, phone number, and if you wanted to expose your Salesforce API, I'm just talking from an API perspective, right? Let's say you wanted to expose your API so that a third party can use it. So you normally enable all settings, and which pretty much generates your client ID secret, right? Which you share with your third party partner who you want to integrate, right? So this is where one of the advantage of the connected apps that comes in picture. But just one thing I just wanted to tell you that if a connected app, right, is created without implementing SSO, then it acts like a bookmark, which means that user can get to the app from an app launcher if you're dealing a connected app or a drop-down menu, but they sometimes have to sign in to use it. All right, so we'll get into that details when we do the hands-on, right? Just for now, just think about a scenario, right? If you wanted to, this is one of the aspects of identity, right? There are different aspects to it, but this is one of the flavors. So if you wanted to give access to your APIs to an external system, just you got to do something like this. Okay, all right. So I'll cancel it. I'm not going to build it right now. All right, so this is a connected apps, okay, so which is fantastic. So I'm gonna, on the same page, I'm gonna write another one that is called a social sign-on. So this is not like a single sign-on, but it sounds a lot like a single sign-on, right? Social sign-on, right? I believe you guys might you guys might be using Facebook, LinkedIn, not WhatsApp, sorry, Instagram. Or Google. Google used to have a Google Hangout before. They no longer support it. But okay, let's stick to Facebook and LinkedIn, right? Just to keep it simple. All right, social sound, right? Why do we need it, right? So with the social sign-on, right? You can use your Facebook account to log into your Salesforce org, all right? So you can even use your Twitter username and password, and you can log into your Salesforce org. Okay, so this is your Twitter. So this is your Twitter account. All right. So this is a sticky man. Yeah, beautiful sticky man, right? All right. So please don't blame my drawing. I suck in drawing. So, all right. So logged in. Okay, and so you can use the same Twitter login to access your Salesforce org. Okay, and the thing with this that so this is one of the thing to do with the social sign-on. Now, usually, right, social sign-on is used when you want your users to log into Experience Cloud site without having to remember the Salesforce username. So if you're providing an Experience Cloud, right, Experience Cloud interface to the user, then it makes total sense to use the social sign-on option to help the user to log in using that to the Experience Cloud. Okay, so you don't have to remember create a separate username and password for that. That's a very simple concept on social sign-on. It's a little bit different to single sign-on, right? Okay, all right. So we talked about three things now: single sign-on, connected apps, social sign-on. We still need to talk a few more topics than we done for today's theory session. Okay, so one of the most commonly talked topic, MFA, multi-factor authentication. Right, please do not confuse MFA with 2FA, okay? 2FA, that two-factor authentication, is a subset of MFA, okay? So multi-factor it goes beyond 2FA, right? I mean, at times people get confused. MFA and 2FA are the same thing. They're not really the same thing. 2FA is a subset of MFA. Okay. Now, why do you need an MFA, right? So usually, right, Salesforce is emphasizing the org to support MFA. Okay. So this is a Salesforce org, right? So come on now. This is like, my drawing sucks, but all right. That's why I'm not a designer, right? I'm not a graphic designer. Yeah, or whatever. Okay, so this is a sticky man, right? Okay, now sticky man decides to log into the Salesforce. Okay, so you have a very common way to do that. One is the UP, that's the username and password. But is that enough, though, if you ask me, right? So at times, user can they can use cyber attack. Okay, they can use they can hack to username and password and get access to the Salesforce, right? So to keep that into consideration, you can implement multi-factor, right? It means you can use the Salesforce Authenticator app, which is a second way. So you log into it and, you install your Authenticator app on your mobile phone, and then it gives you a notification. Would you like to authorize access to the user? And you can authorize it, right? So that's one of the, you can say, 2FA or MFA, right? So more than one way to authenticate to an org, right? That's in simple terms, I'll show you how we can build it, but that's when we deal with hands-on, we're going to talk about it, right? So, right, when you enable multi-factor authentication, right, user has to provide 2 or more pieces of evidence when they log in, right? One factor is the username and password combination, and the requirement for additional factor is, you can use the Authenticator app or other means. So I prefer to use, I've used Authenticator app and the username and password. That's pretty good for now, right? So that's one of the way you can, implement MFA. Okay, so this is where security comes very handy, because the thing is that if you're dealing with, say, a government agencies, right, they are very picky on security, right? Let's say if you're dealing with the customs, right, customs of any country, or intelligence services, for instance, right, if they decides to use the Salesforce, heck no, they will not let you log in using just the username and password, because this is a security breach, right? This is username and password is just a shite way of logging into any system, and anyone can hack it, right? And so that's why MFA plays a very important role, right? So that I'm glad that Salesforce is emphasizing MFA. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so we talked about MFA. I hope that's clear. I hope you enjoyed it. Now we're gonna move on to a very simple topic, which is my domain, right? My domain is the least talked about topic, but yet very powerful. Okay, so I'll just talk about here, my domain. Now, my domain. So usually, right, what happens is when you log in to your developer account, so you normally use login.salesforce.com, right? Pretty simple. Now, that is a out-of-box URL, which is which Salesforce gives you if you wanted to log into your production, or if you wanted to log into your sandbox, you use test. Okay. Now, if you wanted to if you wanted to work in a multiple Salesforce org in the same browser, right? So if you have, this is a browser, okay, and you have, so this is here, this is here, this is here, okay. So if you wanted to use, multiple orgs, you can't use the login.developer.com. You need to have a custom domain URL so that you can work with the multiple org in the same browser. Okay, so that's one thing. And the second thing, and if you wanted to set up a single sign-on with an external identity vendor, then you need to use the my domain. Okay. If you wanted to use LWC component, I mean, I hope that you guys, if you're a developer, if you wanted to use LWC, you need to set up my domain, right? So that's one of the things. Now, if you are someone who works with Health Cloud, then obviously my domain is a requirement. So you cannot use Health Cloud without enabling the my domain, right? So And if or you are working with say financial service cloud, then you still need my domain. Okay, um, so that's one of the reason why my domain plays a very important role if you're talking about the Salesforce identity. Okay, and now I just wanted to talk about two more topics, then we are done with this one. The next thing, which is very important in my opinion and which is highly used, that is the Identity Connect, right? And without talking about Identity Connect, you cannot talk about Salesforce Connect, man. That's just like, you cannot talk about Salesforce Identity, right? Okay, so now what is Salesforce Identity Connect, right? And why it's getting so much of hype and why it's so important. Okay, so Salesforce Identity Connect, right? The main use of it, it actually synchronizes users and the attributes for AD Active Directory in Salesforce. You remember I talked about Active Directory, right? So let's say, okay, I don't want this one. So this is a AD, okay, this is an Azure AD. So your credentials are maintained in Active Directory, right? So say you log into your computer using your, say if your computer is in a network, right? You normally log into your first name to last name at company email domain, right? A company domain, then you enter your username. Okay, so now if you wanted to access the Salesforce org, as a part of your daily job, right, which belongs to your company, it makes no sense that you go and create a separate username here in your Salesforce, right? Ideally, you should be able to log into Salesforce using a single sign-on. Okay, so when a user is created in AD, right, for instance, the same user account can be automatically created in the Salesforce, right? Uh, so if I want a user David, okay, so I wanted to have a user David in Salesforce, and so I can use the same David user which is created in Azure in the Salesforce using Identity Connect without creating a separate one. Okay, so and when a user is deleted from an AD here, the user account in the Salesforce is deactivated at the same time. So it's like to synchronize user between AD and Salesforce in simple terms. That's what Identity Connect does. Okay, so with the Identity Connect, right, you can let user sign into the Salesforce using their AD username and password. In some circumstances, you can configure Identity Connect to automatically sign into Salesforce. So that's pretty simple. I mean, I'm gonna talk about in detail, right? This is just to give you an overview what it means, right? Please do not say that, oh, I haven't covered much. This is just an introduction, and I believe that this is extremely important for you guys to understand what the heck the Salesforce identity is all about, right? Okay, now one last thing I want to talk about, which is very important, that is App Launcher, right? So App Launcher, now I'll tell you what App Launcher in a second. So I just wanted to give you explain in a nutshell what it means, right? App Launcher, when you talk about App Launcher, right, it's a part of Salesforce Identity, right? And it plays a very important role, especially in the Lightning experience, okay? Because, with App Launcher, right, you can access your standard apps, your custom apps, and your connected apps in the Salesforce. That's what an App Launcher do. Okay, so how to launch an app? So how to access an app launcher? So go to this tic-tac-toe icon. You can see app launcher. Click here, and you see you can access service. If you have a Conga here, Conga is a third-party software, right? So if you install Conga, you can access from here as well, right? So that's why I mentioned that using an app launcher, you can access standard, custom object, right? So so that's the beauty of having an app launcher, right? So I hope what I explained to you is pretty clear to you guys, right? So identity plays a very important role. So in simple terms, think about a Salesforce system, right? Integrating with multiple systems, right? Like AWS, your Azure, your SAP or SAP, right? Oracle, right? Heroku Connect, Heroku systems, right? And any other third-party system, right? You don't have to use different username and password. You can connect using a single username and password and access all of this, right? So that's where the SSO comes to the picture. Then we talked about connected apps. We talked about social sign-on if you wanted to give access to Experience Cloud, right? And so we talked about identity, right? And we also talked about my domain, MFA, right? So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. And in the next lecture, we're going to talk about the language or identity, and we talk about Salesforce Identity users in a nutshell, right? And once that's done, we're going to get into the hands-on stuff, right? Because I know hands-on is cool. You guys love hands-on. But before that, I just wanted to make sure that I covered the basics. Okay. That being said, I hope you guys have an amazing day. Greetings and adios.